Hello, everybody. This is Pete from PA Labs, and trying to do something a little different right now. So I thought about it and said, directories are always one of those things that it makes sense in a pure basic way of thinking, but to a person coming from file system object or some of the other languages that have different ways of doing things, sometimes this can be pretty confusing. I've always thought it took me a little while to adjust, but then, old dogs and all that. So I decided I would go ahead and do a video on directories and the directory entries stuff. So if we actually came over to help, hold on, let's jump to get this where it's readable. This is your file system stuff. Now you got two basic folders here, or links is file and file system. File is the reading and writing of data to files on the computer. Um, and file system is dealing with directories and that sort of thing. And so when you mess with directories, and this is something I commented on in my last wargame video, that the temp folder where we're copying the wargame onto the players, we need to make sure that that directory, A, it exists, and B, it's empty. Okay, so how does one go about doing that? And so what I did here in this video is to say, okay, let's create this directory, and he's going to be whatever your local temporary directory is plus wargame. So this is going to be a folder inside this directory. So in order to discover if a folder exists, you have to know if it exists, then you can look at it. And if it doesn't exist, then you can create it. So the way you do that in PureBasic is this with this examine directory. Now, the standard course of most of your example codes, nobody uses a pound PB any here. Although you could, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. But the whole existence of an examine directory is between that directory number that you're instantiating is from here to finish directory. It no longer exists after this one little block of code. That's why you see most people throw in everything from 0 to 42 to whatever your favorite number is. Normally, I jump between several of the numbers because oftentimes I'll open up an examine directory, and then if the code gets to here, we know that this directory is valid and exists. So you always put in the else code here. Let me back that up and line it up. You put in the else code that says, hey, that folder doesn't exist. This number, this instantiated number, never got created, so I don't need to finish it. So here we would jump in and say, create directory, and we can then come up here and say, get the temp directory in this, and come into him and just say, hey, go create it for me. So I'm done. The folder is not open. It is just created. Okay. Now, if it was in existence, you cannot delete a folder if it has contents. Okay. So here's where you come into, all right, I've got a directory. We're examining the directory. The folder does exist. So now what I'm going to do is iterate through the directory entries. Okay. Now, if you're proficient in the old DOS languages and are used to command line coding, you know that every folder has two files in it, and they are, this is kind of funny. They are, I'm going to come up here and we're going to say dot, and then there is dot dot. Now, those are hidden folders, hidden files that exist in the folder that are used for the folder structure. Okay, those don't count. But if you're doing a while directory entry with a star dot star, you will get dot and dot dot read back to you. Now, those are classified directories, and I'm sure it has to do with all the whole um, uh, file structure and permissions and all that junk that goes on at low levels. So we really don't want to play with those guys. So what you want to always do is say, if you're using a star dot star, or you're using a star dot, okay, and that's significantly different because this is a star dot as a parameter in a query like in the examine directory like this will return all the folders that exist inside a directory. Okay, so if you're going after getting all the folders and want to delete existing folders and then look in those folders, so you could create an iterative loop here that a recursive loop that then goes through and looks just at folders and deals with folders. Okay, if you're using, and that will return both dot and dot dot, you don't necessarily want to mess with those. So normally what you'll do is come into here and if you're gonna, like what I'm gonna do is blow everything away. I'm gonna say if name does not equal dot and name does not equal dot dot. Okay, so once we know that, we're good to go. Now, alternatively, instead of that, you could have simply said if directory directory entry type, and when you're messing with directories, we can say entry type equals, let's finish this sentence first. Directory, oh, wait a minute, this is a PB, I'm sorry. PB, is it directories? Directory, where's folders? Directory file, there it is, directory entry file. Then you can do whatever you want, okay? So, except if you want to actually mess with files and folders, you're going to be stuck having to have to do it this way. All right. But I want to make sure that you know that these two guys exist and have an idea what that is. That has to do with the NTFS and all your folder file structure sizing junk. So you can actually interrogate the directory entry type. That if you notice, we examine a directory and we create, basically this is a file system object. And then if you want the directory entry of who, of 6, so you're going to play all of these variables will track with that number just like you would think they would. That's a PureBasic kind of thing. You're issuing a command on an object. So that's what this really is. So at this point, I could say, delete, let's say we could say delete file, and then go ahead up here and you're gonna, this is kind of cool. you have to actually take your path plus your name. Okay. Now you can delete your delete file. Let's come over here. That's actually a file command. I don't believe that is a directory entry command. So you can, and this returns delete file. You got a mode so you can force it and all of that. So this is getting you literally the entry name that you have to add to your path. Okay. So this would work both ways if I put him up here as well. So that is how you actually interrogate a directory and choose to delete something, or if you're actually building a game folder structure or any sort of folder structure for an application, you have to examine the highest level directory in the structure, and then examine and just keep examining the various folders and creating whatever doesn't hit. So here we've created it and we know it's empty. So theoretically, this is the code I need to pretty much insert into my other program that makes sure that the temporary file folder for the war game is empty. Okay, he's going to go through, he's going to list all the files. We're going to blow all the files away. And then we're going to finish with the directory. So this is all released. And if that doesn't need to be run, that doesn't exist, create it. So here you've seen how we can do a lot of things. You can delete directories, but it still follows this same structure of you have to examine a directory, and if it exists, then you can delete the directory, and then you can finish with what you're doing, the file and the folder. So be aware that is how you go about interrogating a file structure and building your own file structure in the PureBasic. And the help system is actually quite good on this. If you know that your first command has to be an examine directory, then here you go. You have everything at your disposal, and they give you a great example right here of what's going on. So thanks for your time.